Hello and welcome to this first MarCloud webinar of this year. It's quite a big one, lots of content to get through. I'll give another second for people to join and then we'll jump right in. But this will be focused mostly on the end-to-end journey from Pardot through to Sales Cloud to advertising to B2B Marketing Analytics. Let's get started. Perfect. So just to introduce myself, my name's Tom. I'm founder and CEO of MarCloud Consulting. I've got about 7 years now experience in consulting and the different Salesforce platforms, and kind of a big deal, number 5 in the Pardot Answers community, which I'll be giving autographed at the end. MarCloud, who are we? We're the marketing automation people for Salesforce. So if it's related to Pardot or Marketing Cloud, we can do it pretty much. So what you're seeing there is just a few snippets of some of our recent CSAT scores, but you can see all of these on the Salesforce App Exchange. We can see lots more examples of our great work on the platform. But more about today. So I've packed it with content and split it into 2 parts. So the first part will be slide-based. I want to run through the definitions because of the name changes. It's been a bit confusing. I want to just reiterate what I'm talking about when I say Pardot or Marketing Cloud Account Engagement, for example. So I'll run through that very briefly so we're all on the same page. I'll go through some customer journey and inbound marketing stuff related to content and how you can manage it and manage engagement studios, or maybe it's messaging and journeys in Marketing Cloud, but just some theory behind that. I'll go through campaigns and campaign hierarchy, explain why it's so important and how it ties in with analytics. And there's probably going to be some other tips in between all of that. But the exciting part for me is the part 2, which is all the demos. So I've got 4 demos for you. The first one is a UTM parameter solution, not the out of the box one. It's one that can track first touch and last touch. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on how you can actually track that history in Sales Cloud. I'll go through the Sales Cloud integration with Pardot and just show you some of the things that you can actually do with the platform as a sales user. And then I'll go through the whole journey from Pardot through to Ad Studio and how you can actually start to very easily enable your sales teams to actually build your advertising audiences, for example, if a lead goes cold. And then lastly, I'll be very lightly touching on analytics. So I'll look at the multi-touch attribution report and just show why it's important and how it kind of ties in with the whole journey that will show you today. So lots to get through, lots of good stuff. And let's jump in. So first, the name changes. So it has been a bit confusing. So we'll clear it up now. Pardot has a new name. The new name is Marketing Cloud Account Engagement, or MCAE, some people call it, MCAE, or some people like me refer to it as Pardot still. I probably shouldn't, but if you hear me say any of these words, they all mean the same thing. And I kind of use them interchangeably, which is why sometimes it's a bit confusing. But that's Pardot, MCAE, Marketing Cloud Account Engagement. Then you have like Marketing Cloud. Normally it was referred to as just general Marketing Cloud, but specifically Marketing Cloud Engagement refers to messaging and journeys within the Marketing Cloud platform. And this is where you build your email, SMS, push campaigns, and you would use data extensions to load them. But specifically engagement is messaging and journeys. And then when we say Ad Studio, what we really mean is Marketing Cloud Advertising, which is the new name. That's probably the easiest one to remember. If any of this is confusing, don't worry. I'll go through plenty of demos and you'll be able to see the differences between the 2. Brilliant. So with the customer journey, then this is a really basic slide just to kind of highlight how simple what us marketers kind of try to do and to really illustrate the overlap between the platforms. So typically, the idea is to generate leads, inbound marketing, go from unknown prospect or visitor, through to a won deal. But most companies don't really want to stop there. There's the retention side of things when contracts expire. There's the upsell element, if it's a big company, there's cross-sell, but then eventually there's brand advocacy, which is where you can start to try and get case studies, testimonials, and just really sort of benefit the brand in a different way. And you can use Marketing Cloud and Sales Cloud together to achieve these goals. Now, with any marketing automation plan or approach, you should always document and draw your vision. The idea being is that you start with the end in mind and you draw things based on your blue sky thinking. Don't constrain yourself to what the tech can do. You write down exactly the journey that you want, and then you work backwards. If there are any technical limitations, you find workarounds, you find tools to achieve your goals. You try not to lead with the tech. Always start with the end in mind, because that will allow you to find gaps, and then you can lean on automation to fill those gaps. And then you can start to think about like more complicated things, like how customers filter back into your engagement studios, scenario testing, what happens in XYZ instance, will someone receive too many emails? And even if you're a basic user and you're building really basic journeys, you should still document it, because eventually it will grow arms and legs and it will build outwards and get more complicated as you grow. Now, that image on the right-hand side here, this is actually one we built for ourselves. So we have a big inbound marketing approach. We do webinars, we do lots of content, and we get people into Pardot. When they're opted in, we start sending them emails. We've got lots of programs alongside each other to help push them along the journey a little bit quicker. And then once we learn more about people, we really tailor the journey to their needs. And if we need to, they go cold potentially, we can push them into advertising audiences via Marketing Cloud. Or if they're already in Sales Cloud, we give our sales users the opportunity to put them into a list where they can automatically be pushed into an engagement studio. And I'm going to show you how to do that in one of the demos. Now, campaign hierarchies are really important. They kind of underpin the reporting and ROI tracking of the whole system. So you should really be thinking about, what questions do I need to answer? A good example we had was one of our case studies about a growing company. They started, I believe, in California, and their key targets were California, the rest of the US, the rest of the world, because each area had a different level of growth. So we built their campaign hierarchy to focus on, okay, how is California doing versus the rest of the world? Because they had to be split, because one was in a very early sort of immature stage of growth and California was quite saturated. So it was really beneficial for us to actually see regionally how they differed. You might do it via campaign or channel, sorry, and there's lots of different ways to chop it up. And then what you'll end up with is the good analytics, which I'll show in demo 4. But the right-hand side here, there's lots of good stuff. So once you set up a campaign, you should really be thinking about campaign member statuses. Now, campaign member statuses are important because they give you this nice pie chart and you can see how a campaign is performing. But then also you can do very clever things with them, as I'll show later on, where you can use them as vehicles to do different automated activities based on the member status. Really simple example of this is, if your member status is absent from this webinar, do we want to send the recording? Yes. If you attended, maybe we send a warmer message. But there's certain things we can do within the campaign member status to learn things and to trigger actions off the back of. So on to content then. I always share this image on the left because I think it's brilliant. It's a really nice way to illustrate how content should be produced and how it should be thought about. Stage 1 being very light introductory content, whereby you're introducing someone to the brand. It's very light blogs, maybe some videos, introductions. So I now know the brand a little bit more. Whereas stage 3 is a little bit more intense, maybe some more technical documentation, maybe some pricing. But the idea is you're pushing someone through the customer journey to eventually either fill in a contact form or show enough intent that scoring and grading can pick them up, and then we treat them as an implicit lead. Now, the right-hand side is the data. This is within the analytics section of the B2B Marketing Analytics, is the name. And this is where you sort of learn how your content is performing. Now, I was proved wrong by this data. I was really impressed with our lead grading calculator asset, because it's a really useful tool, really interactive, really good tool to have. But it didn't go down well with our audience. I mean, it didn't have many downloads. So my belief and my experience was actually wrong in that instance. And that's why it's so important to actually look at the analytics and then review how things are actually performing. And to also group those into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Now, something that underpins, I mean, the concept of Pardot for me is the fact that it's a filter. So this is the reason why we built our Pardot Prospect Scanner and event solution. So what that does is it puts data straight into Pardot as opposed to Salesforce. So the idea being is if you meet someone at an event, they shouldn't necessarily gain the right to enter the CRM straight away because they may never speak to you again. So the idea is you put them into Pardot, you nurture them, you would use scoring and grading to then push them into Sales Cloud if they show enough intent, or if they fill in a contact form, explicit lead, go into Sales Cloud. But Pardot kind of protects your database, and the idea being that you would have a cleaner Sales Cloud instance off the back of using Pardot. So again, using scoring and grading, really important. Assign when the threshold is met, looking at that model for your implicit leads. Now, for returning leads, we need to map a process because Pardot can't reassign leads, and that tends to stump a lot of people. And for me, it's really important to remember that a lead or a contact is a person, and an inquiry is an extra thing that someone does. What a lot of companies do is they duplicate leads per inquiry, and they end up with a database full of the same person. Whereas you should be thinking about it in terms of the database relationship, which is one person, Tom Ryan, is one lead. And if I fill in a contact form 10 times, that might be 10 tasks. Or if I'm a contact, it might be 10 opportunities. It's a one-to-many relationship. Tom, can do X amount of inquiries, but there's only still one person at the end of the day. And if you follow that approach, it's a possibility to achieve that view, a single view of the customer. So you have to be thinking like that, because the second you duplicate, you're not going to get a single view. And then think about re-engaged leads and the end game. So when a lead comes back from being cold, what happens, and how do you use that? Use the system to actually support that. And in the demo, I'll show you a couple of cool tips and tricks. Cool. Just to quickly touch on the two different types of leads. So for me, it's quite simple in terms of there's only really two types. There's one which is explicit, and that's those who put their hand up, they fill in a contact form, they phone you, they email you. It's very much high intent. And from your perspective, you're being very reactive. So you're reacting to the inbound inquiry, and that's an explicit lead. Whereas the other type of lead, which is what this automation platform does really well, is looks for implicit leads. Now, the implicit leads are those that are they have a very high score, which means that they're interested in you. They have a very high grade, means you're interested in them, and they're doing things with high intent. So they're downloading that stage 3 content. There's a lot of activity going on. Now, if you factor this into your marketing automation, it means that you can build a pipeline of leads, and you can switch from explicit leads if times are tough and there's not many leads coming in, and then you can focus on the implicit. So you already have a pipeline there. But the good thing is you're a smaller company and you don't have the resource to actually outreach to them. You can automate that too. You could have journeys set up specifically for implicit leads that can just manage them until you're ready to pick them up and you have resource. And then similarly, you can treat them both differently with different lanes. At MarCloud, we have an explicit leads queue and we have an implicit leads queue. Just so if there's any downtime, we can just dip into the implicit leads queue and try to generate leads that way. Just a tip, if you're using Slack, I highly recommend using the Pardot and Slack integration. It's amazing. We use it in MarCloud, and these are real screenshots. So it's just an extra way to communicate when a new lead has come in. So we do the normal email alerts and put them into queues and so on, but we use a Slack channel as well. And it's really good because it means that, in real time, we can actually keep a finger on the pulse and know what's happening, especially when we're looking for specific types of leads. Like, for example, our Pardot Prospect Scanner, a new solution. It's quite exciting for us. So we want to jump on those quite quickly. So definitely use that integration. Amazing. So I've seen a lot of demos, and a lot of the demos use Star Wars. But for us, I just want to use something a bit different because I like Lord of the Rings. And we're going to use Frodo as an example. In our demo today, Frodo's on a new quest, not as exciting as his last one. But in this one, he's looking for data compliance services, and we're going to follow him on his journey. So we're going to show off here the UTM parameter solution, whereby we're going to grab the first touch and last touch, and then show how this looks in Sales Cloud. So let's hope it works. We're in Pardot. You can see my screen. So what I've got here is Frodo's record. I'm going to just scroll down slightly and just show you the out-of-the-box solution. So this here is the out-of-the-box Google Analytics section with UTM parameters. Now, this part here only works if two things are in place. The first one is it has to be the prospect's first touch point. That's critical. And then the second one is they have to have accepted cookies. If one of them isn't there, this will not populate. And a lot of clients have a blank section here. This is not what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on our custom solution, which pulls in the UTM parameters from the URL. So we have 10 new fields. The first one being this section here. And this is where we're going to keep the source UTM parameters. And then we have this one here, which is the last touch. You're going to see these populate throughout the demo with the UTM parameters. So Frodo has been reading the newspaper and he's been looking through, and he has seen an ad from us about data compliance services, and it's from the Shire newspaper. So the UTM source here, if you can see the URL, is the Shire newspaper. Our medium is paid newspaper ad, and so on. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to download the first data compliance PDF. So what we've got here, Frodo's filled in the form, but we've added some script to this form. That's going to grab the UTM parameters and start populating those fields that I just showed you. So if I go back to the record in Pardot, I'm just going to sync with CRM because that's going to be important later for the demo. Activity populates. And then what we can see here is UTM campaign, Hobbit targeted ads, because it's part of this campaign we're running. We can see all of the UTM parameters. Frodo was interested because it was a picture of Gandalf, and so on. So this is populated quite nicely. When these two sections match, it means that it's the first UTM parameters. So of course they're going to match, but this one moving forwards will stay the same because that's going to be the source. And this one here is going to be the one that constantly updates. This section down here doesn't change because it's not the first touch point. So that takes away that one that I told about earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill in another landing page. So download number 2, Frodo's actually gone about his day. And later that day, he jumps on Shirebook, which is a version of Facebook. I don't know. And he's now going to download the next piece of content because he's seen another ad and he was interested in what I had to say. So we're going to register again, or download, I should say. And we're going to see how that looks again on the prospect record. Think of CRM. Scroll down. And now we can see this is updated. It's still part of the Hobbit targeted ads campaign, but this time it's a picture of Smeagol with some receipts. It's from Shirebook, so we know the source, and we can see the term as well. So this is updated quite nicely. Your next question might be, when Frodo downloads a third piece of content, this one is going to disappear and it's going to be overwritten and that value is lost. It isn't, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So let's go ahead and do that. So Frodo's been reading that second PDF and he noticed there was an offer in there for 2-for-1 tickets to Rivendell. He's got good memories of that place. So he's going to download the third piece of content so we can get his 2-for-1 ticket. So he's downloading part 3. Here we go. And then again, let's go back to the prospect or prospect record. I'm going to sync it again. And here we go. So the 2-for-1 ticket to Rivendell offer is in the content. It's changed campaign because this wasn't part of that original targeted ads. This was within the PDF. And then we can actually see all the information populating as we'd expect and as we hoped. So that's brilliant. But like I said, where is the audit trail of this? Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I'm going to jump to Sales Cloud now with one click. Wait for this to load. And what you can see here is we've already set up a section for the UTM information. So those fields in Pardot are actually connected to the fields in Sales Cloud, and they're going to be updating as we go. So we can see the 2 tickets for Rivendell offer is the most recent touches. And then the picture of Gandalf, remember, that was the first touch point. So these are updating nicely as it syncs across the 2 systems. But the history of this, you've got a couple of options, really. The one I'm going to show you is field history tracking, whereby if I just jump to this related tab, I can see all of the lead history here. If I click into this, I can see the previous values and I can see the new values. I can see it went from Shire Book, which is the second touch point, to the part 2 data white paper, which is the third one. So now you've got a history and log of all of this. You can create Salesforce reports to show and report on these different value changes. Or interestingly, you could have a flow set up whereby you create an object every time those 5 UTM parameters are updated. Quite a nice approach. So every touch point, you're just creating this memory of each UTM touch point that was created. And then you can start to do whatever you like with that data, put it into analytics or elsewhere. But that's the solution for the UTM. Works brilliantly. Now let's jump back to our next demo. So demo number 2 is our Sales Cloud actions. So unfortunately, Frodo's been in the system, but he's been ignoring me. He's probably on another adventure, and he just hasn't replied to any of my emails. So as a salesperson, what I can do here is a couple of things. So bearing in mind, we're talking about the integration between Sales Cloud and Pardot. This really focuses on that close connection between the 2. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change Frodo Baggins' lead status to cold. And I highly recommend to any client to use lead statuses, especially with Pardot, because then you can start to understand what stage of the journey someone's in. And by that, I mean, when I mark this current status as cold, I want you to ignore this section for now, this little pop-up, because that's going to be demo number 3. But by putting Frodo into the cold lead status, I know I've got a list set up in Pardot as cold lead status, long-term nurture list. It's a dynamic list, and it's constantly looking to see when someone's lead status changes to cold. So it takes about 10 minutes to run, so I won't show you this. But this here, lead status is cold, Frodo meets that criteria, he goes into the list, all of a sudden he starts to receive 1 email every 3, 6, 12 months, which is a really nice process that works quite well. And if you wanted to, you could see the usage as part of the cold leads re-engagement campaign, and then you can have a look at the emails that Frodo would receive. Brilliant. So we've changed his lead status, but what else can we do? Well, we can add a button to the lead object called Add to Engagement Studio List. Now, I really like this feature, primarily because of the amount of detail a salesperson can actually get. So if I change this to, if I type in nurture campaign, I might say as a salesperson, I want Frodo to be in a top of mind campaign because I just want to be the first person he speaks to when he comes back. However, the information pulled through from Pardot tells me that this engagement studio is paused. It's great. I can read the description and so on, but it's paused. So I really want him to receive some emails. So I'm going to change this to product launch and add him to that as well. And this one's running. So I know he is going to receive 4 emails because marketing have added a description. That's really nice of them. And I'm going to add them to these 2 lists. Now that feature only shows lists that are actually connected to an engagement studio. It's quite a nice feature to have, really, because you don't have 100 lists. You've just got the ones that are actually connected to a campaign, an engagement studio program. So whilst I've done that, I'll very quickly jump to this engagement tab, because as a salesperson, I need to understand why he's not replying to my emails. So I can jump to the engagement section and see that. So he was busy in April, so he has been active. I know that he's engaged with these campaigns. He's engaged with this content. This was the last time that he was actually active. So that's quite interesting. But I actually understand now from reading this, maybe it's the wrong area of expertise. I'm not that clued up on data compliance. So therefore, I'm going to reassign this lead. So what I can do is I can edit the record, and assuming the salesperson has the permissions, I'm going to tick this box, assign using active assignment rule. And when I hit save, it's just going to filter through the lead assignment rules that's already set up in the Sales Cloud instance. So it's going to go back through the criteria. I'm going to say, look, sorry, this isn't for me. Save. And then all of a sudden, Frodo's now back into a Middle Earth queue, which is probably where he belongs. So I'm going to show you one more thing, or 2 more things. Again, referring to the seamless integration between Sales Cloud and Pardot. We've added a field here, so it takes me to the Lightning URL. I can click this link. It takes me back to the Pardot record for Frodo. So now I'm back in Pardot. Looks and feels very much the same, which is great. I can just double check he's in the lists, and product launch nurture and top of mind nurture, they're both present. So that's brilliant. But did I need to do that? It's nice that I could. Some sales users won't have access to Pardot for whatever reason. So can I see that in Sales Cloud? And the answer is yes. So let me click once to take me back to the lead record. I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom, but I can also see these lists here. So if I wanted to, I could actually just stay within the lead record, and I can see that the product launch nurture campaign list is there. Top of mind nurture list is there, and I can add if I want to. So I'm going to add into a GDPR mini series, hit save. He's now in that list as well. So that's a really nice way to show how seamless it can be, and how marketing and sales can align better by using some of the core features within the platform. And again, if I just wanted to triple check this as a marketing user within Pardot, I can check to see if Frodo's here, and he is. I can check the usage, this product launch list that he's in. He is in a running campaign. And if I was a sales user, I could jump in if I've got permission, and I can actually look at the campaign just to see what emails that Frodo's actually going to get. So that's a really nice seamless process between the two, and it looks and feels very much the same. So that's demo 2. Hopefully I'm doing okay. We're going to move on now, and we're going to take this to the next step. We're going to start to look at Ad Studio. So Frodo has still not replied to my emails. He hasn't replied to any of the marketing collateral. So I actually want to push him into a Marketing Cloud advertising audience, if you like. So I want to catch him again on Shirebook, although I don't think that's supported, probably Facebook. And I want to do all that via Ad Studio. So let's have a think about how this actually works. This is the theory. Don't be overwhelmed by this. It's much simpler when you see the demo. So bear with me for just 2 minutes while I explain this. So Pardot as a platform, again, your filter, that brings data in, bringing prospects in, and that will update prospects via forms, progressive profiling, and other means. And that will update Sales Cloud. Now, there's a number of ways you can actually push or report on leads and contacts within Sales Cloud to get them into an audience. But today, I'm going to focus on campaigns and campaign member statuses, as I mentioned a bit earlier. And this is another reason why they're so important. So Pardot has a prospect, and it adds a lead, Frodo, to Sales Cloud. So Frodo's in Sales Cloud now. What I'm going to do in this demo is I'm going to add Frodo to a campaign with a specific member status. And that member status is going to be to advertise to. Now I have a report set up in Sales Cloud to basically say, show me a list of anyone with the campaign member status of to advertise to as part of that campaign. Now, assuming I have MC Connect already configured, there's something called Automation Studio within Marketing Cloud. And all that's doing is it's checking every day, has anything changed on that report? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it just keeps checking. And if there is any change, it will grab that data and it will push it into a data extension. That data extension is linked to Ad Studio, and then off you go. So whilst this graphic looks a little bit busy, that's the simple concept. And I'm going to show you how that works now. So let me refresh this lead because we made Frodo cold. Now this message here is quite important. It says to push this lead into a Marketing Cloud advertising audience, add this lead to the Ad Studio leads main ad audience with the lead status of to advertise to. From a sales perspective, that is all I need to do. Assuming this is configured, as a salesperson, I can stay within the lead record, and this is all I need to do. And then I can get on with my day and carry on. Just remember that as I go through the steps, because as a salesperson, you just do one thing and it's done. I'm going to click this because it's going to take me to the campaign. So if I wanted to view it, I can see the pie chart of member statuses. So I can see to advertise to, and I can see suppress from ads. So this exact process can be copied as I show you it, and you can do it for a suppression list as well. And I'll go through an example of that once we go back to the lead record. Let me close this. Now let me go to the campaign history part here. So Frodo's already part of a monthly newsletter campaign. That's how we entered the system. And I'm just going to say add to campaign. Now, this is the campaign that the message told me to add them to. I'm going to hit next, and I'm presented with two options. I have, well, three, two options, to advertise to or suppress from ads. Now, again, you can copy the process and have a suppression list, but for today, to advertise to is what I care about. As a salesperson, my job has finished. No more actions for the salesperson. This is where I give you a little tip. What you could do once they're in the audience and assuming they're receiving ads, at some point, Frodo might come back. And then if he does, if he goes to new or working or qualified, you might want to have some automation in the background to say, you know what, when that lead status changes away from cold, just update that campaign member status to suppression, because I don't want to have to pay for more ads and for this lead who's come back. So have a think about how you can close the loop of the advertising, if that makes sense. But for now, I want to jump over to a report I've created in Sales Cloud. And honestly, all this is looking at is your campaign member status for this campaign, is it to advertise to? And if it is, you're going to appear in this list. Let's find Frodo. He is on here somewhere. Frodo Baggins, adventurer. This is Frodo here. So he has entered the report. So I'm happy with that. That's test one done. So now I'm going to jump to Automation Studio in Marketing Cloud. So again, this is kind of a set and forget type approach. If you can have a look at this detail here, it says days of the week to do this. Check it Monday, check it Tuesday, check it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. At this time, don't ever stop. Just constantly check if that report is changing at all, if anyone's being added. And if someone's added, I'm going to run this automation, but just for the purposes of the demo. So let me run this. Now, what that's doing is it's looking at Salesforce and it's going, right, has anything changed? Is anyone new on that list? And it's going to pull them into that data extension, if you remember the graphic. So I can then jump over to my data side of Marketing Cloud, and I can say, right, go to data extensions, because that's where they're being pushed into. I am then going to look into the data extension that we've chosen. Let me refresh this. So data extensions, Ad Studio main audience. We've aligned the naming conventions just to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to go to records. I'm just going to type Frodo, and it's going to try and search for that email. And brilliant, it's all worked. Frodo is gone from Pardot through to Sales Cloud. Lots has happened. He went cold. We did a number of things, added into a list. Now we've added into a campaign, and that has kicked off a process. So now he's in the Ad Studio main audience. And from here, it's up to you as a marketer what you want to do. You jump to Ad Studio, you choose your platforms, you configure them, you set them up, and you start your advertising campaigns. You'd copy that exact same process for the suppression list, and then you would move from there. So hopefully that showed the mechanics of how it works quite well. I'll go through questions at the end, because I'm sure there are some, but in simple terms, that's how it works. And it's quite a nice process, for, especially for Pardot users, how to get them across the full customer journey. Last demo, before my voice goes, is the analytics. So I'll sort of very briefly touch on the campaign as a whole. So let me jump over to demo 4. So this is an out-of-the-box B2B marketing analytics report. I've just added 2 sections below. Now you can interact with these. So if you're a Pardot growth customer, you should definitely think about upgrading to Plus, Advanced, to get the more powerful reporting features. If you've got Plus or above, you've got B2B Marketing Analytics and definitely should be using it. Main reason being is if I wanted to click into this data and say, look, this opportunity here is huge. Who's responsible for it? I can see that Gandalf's a key contact. Brilliant. Maybe I want to report alongside another ad campaign. So maybe Ad Studio Facebook, the Facebook campaign. Let's compare them. So let's have a look here. Social media, web marketing, and I can see all the ops and all the contacts associated to it. Similarly, I can select all of the campaigns, and I can see, right, that's the biggest portion. What campaign is that? Oh, that's my Ad Studio main audience campaign. Brilliant. And I can see again who's involved. But I can also change the attribution model. So really quick tip here. You need to be using contact roles. If you're using Growth Plus, you need to be using contact roles, because that will enable this even touch, first touch, last touch model. If you've got advanced or premium, you can start to use cool things like the data-driven model. And that's where AI starts to try and uncover lots of connections between the opportunities and the contacts. Because a contact role is a direct association, the AI will just figure out the revenue for you. And you can see how different this report looks. If I try and look at the biggest one here, it's not going to be that campaign we saw earlier. It was the industry trade show. There's different angles that you can see of the same data, which is quite a nice thing to have. Look at first touch, again, back to Ad Studio main ad audience. So highly recommend looking at this. Campaigns are absolutely crucial to get this working. And that's why earlier on I said to you about looking at campaign hierarchy, but then also looking at member statuses as well. These 2 things get together are really powerful. Amazing. I want to briefly touch on a couple of things before we go into Q&A, because we're not just consultants, we like to build things as well. One of them being our on-demand training. Of course, we do one-on-one training. We do that quite often, but we have a whole platform for training up and upskilling on your own time. And you can just jump on whenever you need to. You've got access for a whole year. Just learn Pardot if you want to. And you'll definitely get the specialist exam after that. We use that internally to train people up. And there's some consulting tips in there as well. It's a really good course. But then also we have the email development course. I personally believe all marketers should have some level of HTML knowledge. And in this course, we give you an email template to amend. We hold your hand through developing an email template that works in dark mode, responsive, really good template. That's number one. Number two, we have a Pardot Prospect Scanner. It's live on the app stores. Definitely recommend trying it out. And it's a full event solution. So you could scan data into Pardot, add to list, add to campaigns, update custom fields. But then we've also got this nice feature where you can scan QR codes. So you can check people into an event. So you don't have to use the event Wi-Fi. You don't have to use their QR codes. You can set up the whole process yourself with your mobile. And off the back of that, add them to engagement studios and do whatever you need to do. So really nice solution. Over to questions, and I'll ask Carl to jump in a second to help me out, but I'll quickly answer these ones first because these came in as people signed up. So how do you handle leads when most of your leads come from contacts you already have in Salesforce? So that ties in with kind of what I said earlier about how you manage data and how you shouldn't duplicate, because people's first instinct tends to be, it's a contact, let's duplicate it as their lead and then convert it back into the contact. It's a bit of a messy approach, and it doesn't go with the one person approach. So the idea there is you'd use different objects, the one-to-many relationship, to handle that. So yeah, but we can help you through that type of thing as consultants to find out what the best approach is. How to unassign a lead and change to a prospect. You would delete the lead or the contact, because every prospect in Pardot has a CRM ID. You need to get rid of that for it to only become a prospect again. But what you'll notice is there'll be a CRM deleted flag on the Pardot side. It's super easy to get rid of it. Just run an automation rule. But you would delete them from the CRM, and then you would run that rule, and then the Pardot prospect only again. Will we be sending a recording of this webinar? Yes, we will. Carl, are you there?
I am, yeah. Thanks for that, Tom. Appreciate that. I've got some good feedback on the session as well. We do have a few questions. One that's just popped in actually from Cecilia is, can we talk a little bit more about contact roles and what they are?
Yeah, so funny enough, I actually spoke to the one of the guys in the Einstein AI team in Israel a year or two ago, who helped build some of the Salesforce features. We were talking about how it kind of works. So contact role, if you imagine like a wall between two things, you've got the contact here and you have the opportunity at the other side of the wall. A contact role basically throws a line over from the contact over to the opportunity. It just creates a direct association from that opportunity to the contact. Now, when it comes to Einstein AI, we described it as following breadcrumbs and going around the wall, that kind of figuring it out. The contact roles are important because it shows and especially tells Pardot that there's a direct association from this contact over to this opportunity. Otherwise, the system doesn't know that there's a link between the two. That's why they're important. But there's other Sales Cloud benefits to having contact roles. Like knowing who the decision maker is, the influencer, and that type of thing. But from a Pardot perspective, it's about making the connection between the two objects.
Cool. Hopefully that answered your questions, Cecilia. Ben Wiley has just asked, how important is campaign hierarchy structure for how we wish to see reporting?
I'd say very. If you operate on a flat structure, it can get quite confusing, especially when you start to look at the campaign attribution modeling. But then also when you start to look at, say, just in general, your email campaigns, because you can roll up data and there's fields that you can add to the campaign object where it says like number of contacts in hierarchy, number of opportunities in hierarchy. And what that's doing is it's saying, if you've got a campaign called webinars and you've got a campaign underneath it with the specific webinar, for example, you can look at different levels and say, how effective was this webinar versus how effective are webinars? So you're kind of answering two different questions. One's very specific to an individual webinar, and one's just in general, should we still be doing webinars? And then above that, you might have a region. Are webinars effective in France versus are they effective in the US? And you can answer different questions based on how you build that hierarchy. So that's why it becomes quite important. And that's just an example. You can answer lots of different questions with it.
Excellent, thank you. We had a question earlier on in the session as well for UTM tracking. Do we need to ensure they've opted into non-essential cookies?
Yeah, depends. For the out of the box UTM solution, yes, like the Pardot one. For our script, no. But you should always be asking people for opt-in consent for any sort of cookie. And this kind of ties in with like Cookie Bar or it's loads of different solutions for them. But you should have a cookie consent tool that manages all of your cookies just as standard. It's become the norm now.
Cool, thank you. Bhakti has asked a question as well around Einstein. So can they use Einstein within the Pardot org?
Yeah. So I think it's testing me now. The Einstein behavior score definitely syncs across, as well as there's one or two others, but I forget. Like send time optimization is an Einstein feature that's in the Pardot in Lightning app. But yes, you can use them to an extent. They'll appear on the record. In terms of automating off of them, I have to refresh my memory. It's been a while.
Cool, thank you. So an anonymous attendee stepped away at the vital point at the what the name of the Pardot Scanner app is. So they just want to know what the name of the app is and how it works or where to find it.
On Google Play and Apple stores, Pardot Prospect Scanner. That will make it appear. You might be able to search MarCloud as well, but I'd search Pardot Prospect Scanner.
Cool, perfect, thank you. Quentin has asked, how do you use grading at MarCloud? If we can disclose an example.
Yeah. So for us, our core service lines are, say, we consult on Pardot, we consult on Marketing Cloud, we consult on Sales Cloud. So we grade based on criteria, and they are slightly different for us based on what platform someone's using. So for example, a key thing for us is to know someone's account edition. So we would use grading to understand if someone's on a premium edition of Pardot, and that's great for us. So we really want to be working with them. So that helps the criteria. And it differs for Marketing Cloud because our objectives are slightly different. So we grade them based on job role, seniority, and we basically look at slightly different things because we take a lot of Marketing Cloud projects. So it varies ever so slightly. The profiles for us would be Pardot, Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud, because the differences in the leads are enough that it warrants having them separate. And that's how we kind of use it.
Cool, thank you. I've got a question around the Google Analytics fields. Should they be stamping the UTM fields in last touch if there are no other touches?
What do you mean? Can you reword?
Yeah, so the question was worded, should GA fields stamp UTM fields in last touch in brackets if there are no other touches?
Yeah. So that's what our solution should do. If there's no other touches, it populates both. So you've got the source and the last touch. If there's no other touches, the two will match. I mean, if you wanted to, you can have automation to clear those fields. But general idea is, at least for our solution, is that they'll both match if it's only one touch.
Cool, perfect. Haley has asked, with regard to the UTM custom fields, is she right to assume that we need to set those up herself, so they're not out of the box fields, right?
Yes, correct. So part of our solution, the script basically looks at those fields. So that's why the naming of them is quite important. You can change the names. So if we wanted to change them to something else, we just tweak the script, and then we would manage it in that way to push the data into the right place. You just got to be careful just to make sure it is all formatted correctly, because anything script can break. So if you're playing around with names and stuff like that. So, but yeah, they are all custom fields, 10 in total on the Pardot side and on the Sales Cloud side.
Cool, thank you. Another anonymous question. Can you also show the Pardot activities at contact level instead of a lead level? And can you then also define here which list someone should belong to? So I assume the second part of the question means that somebody should be on a list if they are a lead or a contact.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. I mean, from a Pardot perspective, it's the same record. So CRM ID is the same. Whether you're a lead or a contact, it goes to the same prospect record. And I think you're referring to that screen I showed you on the second demo, where it said Pardot activities and it said Pardot lists. The answer is yes. From a contact, you can do exactly the same thing as I showed you on the lead. You just need to add those bits to the screen. So yes, you can.
Excellent. Lee's asked a question. In terms of the UTM tracking, do you have tools that can track, and I assume this is the journey, but organic search terms through to website visit through to Pardot form completion?
Yeah. So assuming the UTM parameters are there, then this solution would work. If they don't, then you're kind of relying on Pardot tracking code. So Pardot will, to an extent, try and populate the source for you. So if someone comes from the known platforms like Google, if they come from Facebook, if they come from any of the big platforms, Pardot can just work that out for you. Again, it needs to be their kind of first touch point, and they need to accept cookies. If they don't accept cookies, then it just will not populate. So it's why it's so important to have that cookie consent tool in place, because otherwise you're losing out on data.
Excellent. Cool. Another question, can Pardot be considered a DMP in and of itself, or does Salesforce DMP add a significant added value?
It's probably a question for a Salesforce AE, that one. Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure I know enough to answer that one.
Yeah, sorry about that, Quinton. Probably would be the best route to find out from the Salesforce AE, but hopefully you find the answer that you're looking for there. How are we configuring the last touch custom UTM fields differently from the first touch UTM fields?
Oh, in terms of configuration, it's quite simple. So from the form perspective, we're not populating we're hiding the fields if we know them. So essentially the second fields are set to always show. So it means that we would hide the fields from any form. Now, if a prospect then went on and filled in a form from a different browser and it wasn't cookied, you'd expect that to overwrite. However, it won't, because we've set the field behavior in Pardot to use the Sales Cloud data. So once data has gone across into Sales Cloud, it's kind of stored and fixed there. So if it's ever overwritten accidentally or for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. It will just get pushed back in. It will push back to Pardot.
Cool. Is there a way to report on segmentation lists in B2B MA?
In what sense? You can definitely report on tags. This is where tags become a little bit important. So on lists, I don't believe you can. I think I could be wrong about that, but I don't believe you can. But you can definitely filter by tags. So what you could do in that instance, assuming I'm right, which I might not be, you would just tag that whole list or have something to tag the list, go to B2B MA and just filter by tag, which would be a way to just say that list in a roundabout way.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that, but certainly in any completion actions or anything like that, adding a tag, yeah, basically just gets you covered, doesn't it? So yeah. Either it works but it definitely will work with the tag. Perfect. So I think we're almost there with questions actually. So is there a tool that allows you to calculate in advance how many emails per month, for example, we will send to a prospect?
I think B2MA could do that. B2MA could do that, or a dynamic list. This is a report, isn't it? You're probably doing it at scale. I know there's a dynamic list you can pull to say if someone's been emailed within X amount of time, pull into this list. The alternative there, really, you need a tool, but you could just add. It's not well known, but there's something called an incremental field in Pardot, and every time something happens, you can increment that field by 1. So what you could do is every time you sent an email, you could just have a completion action to just make that field go up by 1. And then as a result, you could go to B2B MA and you can just pull a report on those fields, and it would just be number of times emailed, and then you'd have all your data just from the incremental field. So that could be an idea. But I don't know of a tool, but that's a solution to it.
Yeah, I guess it would be hard to predict, won't it? I know with B2B MA as well, you could do something fancy with cumulative engagement, and you could try and create a predictive line using B2B MA. But again, that's kind of a prediction rather than an exact number, isn't it? But that's probably the closest that we could get to that one.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess there is one final question here. So in terms of the frequent UTM touch points, we had a question around frequent UTM touch points, so not just capturing first and last touch. If there's a way that we could maybe capture the most frequent touch points, I guess, so you could look back on all your campaigns and see which channels are the most lucrative, I guess. So the best approach to that requirement.
Yeah, so I think that would go along the lines of that that slightly different solution where you would potentially, I mean, I'm always hesitant to suggest creating an object for something, but you'd want some sort of record every time those 5 UTM fields came across and were updated to the lead record. You would group them and you would say, right, create a record of those. And then over time, let's just say with 100 touches, you'd create a report on those different records that you created. And then you could pull together, like, I guess, graphs and bar charts to say, okay, these ones were grouping together. And therefore you could find it out that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's it. I think we're out of questions there. So yeah, thank you very, very much for your time, Tom, and answering those questions. Hopefully that answered everybody's questions. But I'll hand it back over to you.
Amazing. Last slide. Thank you. Thanks everyone for turning up. We will send a recording out to everyone. And yeah, have a nice rest of your day.